ranking the clinical benefit of anti-cancer drugs is certainly a very difficult challenge. I have been fascinated by this topic in the last 5 years, and I personally have published 3-4 papers on this that have constituted the basis for some initial work that the Task Force on Clinical Benefit Evaluation of the ESMO has worked on. So essentially in the last 3 years with ESMO, we have put out one of these scales of the magnitude of clinical benefit. We being 5, 6 medical oncologists and a statistician from ESMO have outlined a rather complicated system of ranking the clinical benefit of new drugs in oncology. Now, there are a lot of merits to this publication and this scale. Essentially, it represents the first step ahead in this prohibitive task of categorizing and ranking the clinical benefit of the new agents. At the same time, of course, being the first step, it certainly needs some corrections and some new developments. And during my talk, I highlighted some of these corrections that could be done to the scale. And at the first point I made is in line with the title of the meeting, that is patient empowerment. One of the problems that, looking back, I recognize in the work we have done is the fact that the committee did not include a patient advocate, a patient representative. And the committee also did not include any expert in public health. So in a way that is a problem, because what we have worked out is a system that suits very much our perspectives, the perspective of the clinical researchers, of the doctors. And you know, stakeholders in this business can be identified at least along 3 different avenues. 1, the patient; 2, the doctor; 3, the payer; 4, the regulatory people; and 5, the drug companies. Now, drug companies set the price; they are out. Regulatory people approve drugs, and in a way, they are part of the business, but they say yes or no. So we remain with patient, doctors, and payers. Payers have a general public health perspective. Patient and doctors have an individualized perspective. And now, the problem of the ESMO scale is that it has a public health perspective. It declares, it wants to rank the drugs in terms of clinical benefit in such a way that all the most powerful, the most valuable drugs should be available in those countries where they are not now. So this is a clear public health perspective. And at the same time, it was elaborated by people like me, that is, a clinical researcher, so without expert in public health. So that's one of the problems. So patient, once inside, once part of that committee, they could certainly have contributed in emphasizing or de-emphasizing certain aspect of benefit, of clinical benefit. That's one. Number 2, certainly patients are not so interested in a single trial. And that's a limitation, a mistake, I would say, that we have done in that scale, in putting out that scale. Because essentially we rate only trials, whereas patients are interested in the benefit and value of a drug, not of that drug within one trial. So that's a problem. So this lack of overall view of the problem, certainly that is something that patients would have raised. There are some more technical problems within that scale. There is a paper that, along with my statistician, we have written and is in press on the European Journal of Cancer, will come out in a couple of months from now, is already impressed, and it highlights some of the problems of the scale that continues to hammer issues that are very technical and that do not take into consideration the overall picture. That to me is a direction that should be corrected essentially at this point. So the contribution of empowering patients, even within committees with such a challenging task, is certainly a valuable step to be taken. It's the opposite. The rating should homogenize the availability of drugs. Say, it depends on the perspective. If you consider Europe as a Western culture, you should expect that all European countries benefit from availability of all the clinically relevant drugs. There are some countries that do not benefit from some of these agents. So this ranking system should allow, in the end, to recognize those that you cannot do without, those drugs that you cannot give up to, and that the government should pay for them.